sons and daughters.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Aurora Smedley podcast, where I speak with you about what the world needs to hear. And in today's episode, I'm going to be discussing resolving triggering relationships. And I decided to do this topic because we have the holidays coming up and we all love the holidays. But something that is challenging for so many people during the holiday season is that we have to be head to head with our family and are usually triggering relationships with at least one other family member. So our holiday season is a time of blessings. It's also a time of going right up against all of our former wounding, our previous triggers, the former family dynamics that we've had that might be very frustrating for us. So in this podcast, I'm going to be sharing what I have learned over the years that has been supportive for me in transforming my own relationship with my family. And I'm excited to share this with you. So I'm going to start by giving you some context. And the context is that I have had for many, many years, a very challenging relationship with my parents. So I started fighting with my mom and my dad probably around the age of 3 or 4, if not sooner, and have basically had a contentious relationship for my entire life since then with them. And now, the relationship that I have with my parents, I could not even have possibly fathomed at any point in the past. And that is one of ease, one of relative comfort, comfortability with each other. This is something that I didn't really think was possible because we also have very different viewpoints on a lot of things. I want to share what has gotten me from this place of very challenging, very contentious, lots of fighting, to calm, ease, joy, enjoying our time together, having a good time together. So let me go into a number of different things that have really made that possible for me. I have discovered one of the most effective tools for shifting my relationship with my family is something that I learned from one of my spiritual teachers, which is pause, what a pleasure. So this is whenever you get triggered, you say to yourself, pause, what a pleasure. And this is not to say that I'm taking pleasure from a negative experience. This is saying that every time that you're getting triggered, this is actually an opportunity for you to elevate yourself and your consciousness. So when I get really triggered, I've been starting to just pause. And even if I can't summon up the joy in the circumstance, even if I can't immediately say something that's super enlightened, that's super woke, that's super in touch with all of that is, I'll just pause and not respond for a little bit, and giving myself a tiny, tiny bit of space, a tiny, tiny bit of breathing room is what allows me to begin to choose different options as far as how I'm responding to somebody. Because so often when we're responding to somebody, we're actually not responding to them. We're responding to our triggers that they are evoking. So it's my trigger to them that I'm responding to, not exactly them themselves that I'm responding to. So we can shift this by simply pausing a little bit, giving this a tiny, tiny bit of space, allowing a slight bit of breathing room so that something else can start to emerge from the equation. And each time that you do this, each time that you pause, each time that you give a little bit of space to the situation, when you pull back your desire to respond in a negative or reactive way, it allows something different to start to emerge from the situation. So this is the first thing that I want to point out as something that has been helpful for me is literally just pausing, literally just pulling back and not immediately responding. I've actually found that if I'm really triggered, then sometimes I will just not respond rather than say something reactive or mean or pissed off. If I simply do not respond, then it actually seems to work better. The situation seems to evolve more when I simply do not respond to the situation and just allow there to be space. And the next thing recently that I've found to really begin to shift things is that instead of reacting in a negative way to these triggers, I have started to simply give more to the people that trigger me. So with my mom, for example, I found that if I started to do things for her more, like acts of service or giving her items, making her food or snacks, then this suddenly massively changes the relationship. So my mom used to really bother me a lot about not doing certain chores or getting upset with me for sometimes leaving a mess somewhere. And this would really trigger me. So I would get irritated about it, and then I would do those things. But then even when I did those things, my mom would find other things to be irritable about. So then I was confused, right? Because you're telling me to do these things, and then I do them, and then you're still irritable with me. So I couldn't really figure out a solution. It seemed like I was between a rock and a hard place. If I don't do it, then you're irritable with me. If I do it, then you're still irritable with me. So what do I do? I was very confused about how to solve the situation. But then when I meditated on it, I realized that I needed to give to the situation. So I started to make my mom boba, which is, super Asian. So I started to make my mom boba. Then the other day, I felt called to gift my parents both reusable water bottles. So then I gave them both water bottles. And what I found was that simply by doing these things, simply by giving more, my mom's relationship to me would shift. And suddenly she wouldn't be so irritable about any of these other things anymore. So then I would do the chores. I would still do them. But then she would not be irritable with me anyway. She would not just find a reason to be irritable by default. And so this was a big shift for me because sometimes the cause of the dynamic is not what it's presenting as, or the triggering dynamic is sometimes a symptom of something else energetically that is happening. So in this case, perhaps my mom felt like she wasn't receiving from me as much as she wanted to be. And so because of that, she was being irritable with me with the chores. And so then when I intentionally started to give more to the relationship and show up for my mom more and give more to her as far as food or gifts or these kinds of things, then suddenly our relationship dramatically shifted. And I also found this to work at my workplace as well. So at my work, I noticed that my boss was also being irritable with me, seemingly regardless of what was going on. And I was feeling really triggered because I felt like I was putting in my max, and yet there was still this irritation. There was still this stuff going on. And I found that when I kind of spontaneously bought pens for everybody. I just bought like a big pack of pens, and they weren't even that expensive or anything. But I came and brought them into my workplace and started passing them around to all of my coworkers. And suddenly my boss's relationship to me shifted. So I think sometimes when we just give to the situation, and not from a place of lack, not from a place of unworthiness, not from a place of I need to give to you in order to deserve your love, respect, care. But if you just give to the situation from a place of genuine authenticity, then sometimes the issue actually resolves itself in kind of a beautiful way. The third strategy that I want to share with you is simply just waiting for longer, allowing your feelings about something to blow over. Recently, my brother came home and I was feeling super triggered because my brother was getting all the warmth and affection from my parents, and I felt like I was so lame, and my brother's doing all these cool things and I'm not doing these cool things, and I'm so lame, and I was feeling really negative about myself and all of this. And I just decided I was just not going to interact with my triggeredness. So I kind of prayed on it, went to sleep, and I woke up the next day and it was gone. So sometimes things can actually go away on their own. I think this is a little bit harder for long-standing triggers, but sometimes if you simply pause and wait on something and allow yourself to give something enough space, then it actually just resolves on its own. You don't have to do anything. And this really ties into the Wu Wei concept that I've discussed in a previous episode, but sometimes things are just energetic transients and they go by. And so long as you don't freak out about it, it actually becomes a non-issue. So the last strategy that I want to share with you is having really honest and uncomfortable conversations. So with my family, I found that just by directly addressing the things that I was upset about, I would often make a lot of progress in our connection. Because when we would have these difficult conversations, it would open us up to more vulnerability, more directness, more connection than I would have discovered otherwise. And so because of that, we were able to really deepen our connection and resolve a lot of the challenges that we used to have on a daily basis. So to overview everything that I've talked about today, first, I've discussed pause, what a pleasure. So literally just giving a little bit of space to the situation and allowing there to be a little bit of time before you start reacting to the whole trigger. Then the second strategy I discussed is giving to the situation, finding a way to, from a place of wholeness, give to the situation rather than try to get something out of the situation. Find a way to give to the person that's triggering you rather than get upset about things. The third thing that I discussed is simply waiting things out, just allowing the thing that's triggering you to blow over and sleep on it. Give it way more time than you think. Distance yourself from it a little bit. Don't react. Don't get all upset. And just sit on it. And sometimes it just resolves on its own so long as you give it a little bit of space. And finally, having very direct and uncomfortable conversations that you don't want to have really begin to open up a relationship and begin to shift the dynamic by getting straight to the heart of the uncomfortable side of things. You really start to unearth the things that might be triggering you, that might be hurting you, that you might be reacting to in negative ways. And this gives you an opportunity to resolve them very rapidly. The last thing that I do want to mention is that I think that talking about the problem is actually a fairly limited thing. Sometimes we think that talking about a problem is the thing that resolves it. But actually, when you talk about things too much, it can sometimes exacerbate the problem and pour salt on the wound rather than resolving the thing. And so I think there's a certain amount of talking about things that is productive, and you will intuitively get to a point where you feel that enough has been said and that there is not really more to say on this subject. And when you get to that point, then you can let go. At that point, you need to allow the universe to come in and take part in this experience that you're having. So that's the one caveat that I'm going to add to this. One other thing that I'll mention as well is that any of the triggers that we have are actually developing us personally and spiritually. So when we're having these triggering encounters, this is actually great because this is an opportunity for you to level up. This is an opportunity for you to go to your next level in not just your relationship with your mom, dad, partner, boss, but everybody else in your life. Every time that you resolve a certain trigger in one area of your life, it actually resolves that trigger in all areas of your life. And so this becomes so much more of a non-issue in all these other areas of your life. So I'm very much looking forward to how this benefits you in your own relationships with your family, friends, and loved ones this holiday season. And I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast.